Putin and the End of History. Putin has seen the West's breakdown of courage, inability to protect itself from external existential threats, and weak slavishness to liberal culture, whilst it erodes the values of traditional societies. In the 1990s, there was a widespread belief among the liberal left that the era of globalization had heralded a period of settlement. The great questions of the day, they said, were not to be resolved through Bismarckian blood and iron, but rather through international trade, global agencies, the World Bank, and the International Monetary Fund. It was expected that authoritarian regimes would realize the benefits of the liberal world and liberalize, democratize, and open markets to foreign trade. Francis Fukuyama proposed the end of history. He argued that rather than a Marxist paradise, a liberal democratic one will come from the Hegelian process of history. Liberal democracy would cease history's movement. However, this approach was founded on some fundamental misunderstandings about economic history and society. Liberal democracy wasn't a globalized promised land, and it was naive to regard one age as the end of history. Globalization reversed in 2011. This was attributed to rises in domestic GDP worldwide and China's reorientation towards home markets. There has also been a huge rise in protectionism around the world. COVID-19's effects and now security threats have hurt foreign investment. Volatility in overall trends demonstrates global capitalism's instability. While trade becomes more oriented to home markets, the trade in services has shifted eastward, with China taking a larger proportion of the business. The realities of protectionism and nationalism are a result of the negative consequences for poorer domestic populations who are not party to the liberal global leverage of the transnational elites. In peripheral and developing countries, the liberal utopia of the end of history has not come to pass. Putin's position has revolved around these factors. Putin has realized that resource scarcity drives history, not globalization or liberal democracy. Russia has leveraged its resources, especially fossil fuels. In order to get oil and gas, developing countries like those in Africa will be used as pawns. Putin knows that the 19th century ascendancy of Europe's liberal states was geographical and resource-based, born of industrialization and colonialism. This resource-based approach sees each culture as distinct, as the nation struggles in a cyclical flow without ideal endgame like liberal democracy. American geographer and historian Jared Diamond says that the loss of important trading partners is one of the most important reasons why societies in the past fell apart. He explains how Pitcairn Islands Polynesians suffered as a result of the collapse of their shell trading network. After internal fighting over resources and land resulted in the destruction of the Henderson and Mangareva Islands. Instead of democracy or human rights, resource protection drives modern geopolitical events. Huntington saw Ukraine as a divide between Catholic and Orthodox. These are important, but not deciding factors. The Russian worldview perceives a collision of civilizations, but their line of demarcation is between Russian tradition and a greater Eurasian Union, which they see as the opponent of the liberal world. Putin seeks advice from famous Russian philosophers who embrace Christian authoritarianism. The most important book in Putin's library is one by Alexander Dugin called Foundations of Geopolitics. This book talks about the annexation of Ukraine directly. In this way, the idea of a big Eurasia must go against everything Atlanticism stands for. Alongside this ideological foundation, Putin's geopolitics derives its cues from the knowledge that Russia has a significant resource that can be utilized to isolate or leverage power through massive economic flows. The weak result of sanctions serves as proof of this. The Kremlin is well aware that some countries, especially Germany, are not willing to reduce their trade dependence. Our era is marked by a confluence of calamities. Now is the winter of our discontent, which can be explained by Spengler's idea that civilizations rise and fall, not by Fukuyama's idea that one kind of settlement is best. In addition to a global pandemic, we are currently experiencing a geopolitical conflict over resources. These are signs of the breakdown of materialism and liberal hegemony. The purpose, or telos, of the modern world is about to change in a big way. This has happened because community values, family, and traditions have been ignored and left behind. It has been shown that the brave new world of progress and scientific rationalism is a myth. The West has lost its goal and replaced it with the empty values of the liberal market. Putin has seen a breakdown of Western courage, an incapacity to protect itself from external existential dangers, and a unique, weak slavishness to liberal culture, which erodes traditional values. Western states have sacrificed internal cohesion and security for liberal emotions, mass immigration, and attacks on family, biological sex, and community. This assault on tradition is needed to atomize the individual, detach them from community, and make them more marketable. This doesn't mean that Putin's brutal regime is better, it's just a form of gangster capitalism that has brutalized its own people. They do, however, have a clear sense of realpolitik that is missing from the bureaucratic careerist classes of Western government and institutions. Future resource wars and calamities are inevitable. The Chinese will eye Taiwan, where TSMC has a semiconductor monopoly. Donbass contains large coal and lithium deposits. These interests should not be underestimated. The struggle should not be portrayed as a battle between liberal democracy and Putinism's dictatorial far right. This would be another deceitful mirage, absolving the West of involvement in resource interests, liberal free markets, and global elites' pursuit of transnational money flows. It should be regarded as the liberal world's sputtering demise. There is a general trend toward authoritarianism in both the East and the West. This can be seen in the limited scope of representative democracy in EU nations and the executive dictatorship of the UK system. This is a product of the steady march to Asian norms, which bypass liberalism on the path to functional authoritarianism. Liberalism is only good until the next crisis come along. Fukuyama's End of History is premature.